Okay, the bribery trial of Senator Robert Menendez set to begin today, and a conviction could mean a major shift in Congress. So naturally, the mainstream media is, busy talking about this story, and it's a big story to talk about. But in some of these stories, we've noticed a small detail that they're missing in the coverage is the fact that Senator Bob Menendez is a Democrat. Well, joining us now to discuss this, former Congresswoman and member of the Independent Women's Forum Board of Directors, Nan Hayworth. She also did work at the time in Congress that the New Jersey senator was under, though not closely with him, I understand.
Not with him personally, no. But.
So obviously, I mean, the story here that we're talking about is that some of these headlines didn't really show that he was a Democrat. No. Although I have to be fair, I just did look at the CNN story, I looked at the Washington Post story. It did say they were a Democrat, or that he is a Democrat. Some of them did not really want to highlight that, though. The New York Times was very
reluctant to mention.
And I think I heard something that they went through a whole 1,200 word story without even talking about the fact that he's a Democrat.
Until it was pointed out. Yes,
until it was pointed out, and then
the fourth paragraph they did put it in.
And I think you do see these kinds of things all the time. But would it be fair to say, though, that in a story like this, his political party really doesn't matter? Because I think we've seen filthy politicians on both sides of the aisle so many times, right? I mean, it really knows no bounds, corruption.
Well, you're absolutely right, Rob. And unfortunately, the more involved the federal government is in our lives, the more opportunities there are for corruption. And that's a big part of the problem. But the interesting politics of this are that if Senator Menendez is convicted, and let's bear in mind that the person who is felt to have bribed him effectively, Dr. Melgen, has been convicted of Medicare fraud, will be going to prison. So that's not good for the senator, obviously.
No, yeah, that doesn't make it look good, because at least one of you is crooked,
And if he's convicted, then he doesn't have to leave the Senate, but they could have a vote to expel him. It would take a 2/3 vote to expel him from the Senate. And yes, Senate Democrats might be reluctant to do that, but then they'll be essentially helping a convicted felon stay in the Senate.
And then that doesn't look good. Obviously, I mean, they don't want to put another Republican in the Senate because they're really at war with the Republicans right now. But at the same time, it looks terrible to leave somebody that's a convicted felon.
So
let's go to these headlines real quick. I just want to show people what we're talking about here. This is the NBC News headline: Senator Robert Menendez bribery trial could be reshape Senate. As you go down here, you don't see Democrat in the headlines, although I will say that I did look at CNN and WAPO at the bottom, and I noticed that Democrat was in there. It's not in the headlines, but couldn't you say, playing devil's advocate here, that you can't really do this story without acknowledging that he is a Democrat, because the whole story is, how does this reshape the Senate? It's not really a story if he's a Republican.
Well,
it would be. At this point, it still would be, but it wouldn't be that story.
But given that the margins, Rob, indeed are so thin for passing any kind of legislation, as we know in the Senate, and there are all kinds of arcane Senate rules that affect that, having one less Democratic senator will be a further challenge for the Democrats and potentially helpful to the Republicans.
Yeah, 52-48. Either way, it could be a big deal.
And if Senator Menendez is convicted and is either expelled from the Senate or decides to leave the Senate voluntarily before January 20th, 2018, Governor Christie of New Jersey will get to name his successor, probably a Republican.
If that happens in the next few months.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for coming on this morning.
Pleasure anytime.
All right, we'll be right back.